It's a great pleasure to call Imran Ahmad Khan to make his maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's with great pleasure and some humility that I rise to make this my maiden speech. I have found the House to be a welcoming place that I am proud to be part of. Over the last month, I have at times been awestruck by the kindness, helpfulness, and near encyclopedic knowledge of the wonderful staff who serve this place and whom I find this palace's greatest treasure trove. I especially wish to thank my constituency neighbour, my honourable friend for Morley and Outwood, and her team, who have been a great support to me over the last 2 months. I wish to say what a pleasure it is to be part of such a vibrant and dynamic pack of Yorkshire MPs. Indeed, my neighbour from Rothwell and Elmet came and helped me a great deal. In his infancy, he contested Wakefield, and he gave me a lot of his advice, and indeed his shoe leather. Speaking of shoe leather, I'm mindful of all those who've graced this green leather, and I have confidence that we'll step up and meet the challenges promised by this privilege of public service. I'm also aware of the energy and emotion that this House and the people whom it serves have invested into the Brexit debate. The underlying theme of unleashing our United Kingdom's potential to innovate, adapt, overcome and triumph are not lost in the character of my constituency of Wakefield. Madam Deputy Speaker, as Britain does indeed renew and consolidate her place in the world, I can't think of anywhere else more important to be than here, helping that happen now. Britain has still to play up and play the game, improving the world and enhancing our place in it. As an Ahmadi Muslim belonging to a peace-loving minority community that suffers vicious persecution, discrimination and oppression in many parts of the world, I see perhaps more clearly than most the deep and enduring importance of core British values such as compassion, tolerance and fairness, especially at a time when those values are perceived as under threat in many parts of our world. We must continue to be a beacon of thoughtful, respected and innovative thinking, born of years of accumulated learning and practice. Before I launch into the rich history of Wakefield, one with which my own family story is intertwined, I want to pay tribute to my predecessor. In 2005, Mary Cree became the first woman elected to represent Wakefield, a tenure that was to last for 14 years. I'm not sure if the House is aware, but before Mary and I first met, she propelled me to new heights, approximately 13,000 feet. On a bright November morning last year, after reading Mary's comments in the Yorkshire Post about her incoming Tory opponent being parachuted in, I put the protestations of my friends and family aside and performed a parachute jump. This hadn't been on any bucket list of mine, but definitely got the adrenaline flowing. So thank you, Mary. Later that day, with my feet firmly on the ground, I met Mary for the first time. We were both appearing on a BBC Radio Leeds drive time debate. I turned up still resplendent in my true blue jumpsuit. Mary accepted this with good grace, and during this first encounter, set out her stall as a calm, concise, and experienced advocate. That first meeting was in one of Wakefield's many good schools, Queen Elizabeth's Grammar School. It was Quegg's, where my eldest brother went to school, and arch rival to my own alma mater, Silcoats. Quegg's is an independent school that has actively championed and supported its local state sector rivals, including the outstanding Pontefract College, and was a willing participant in the Assisted Places scheme. As the programme came to an end, the pupils in the audience immediately gravitated toward Mary. This was an example of the interest and affection that many constituents in Wakefield have for her. I, like Mary, contend with a hearing impairment, something she referenced in her own maiden speech in this House. Wakefield has, within its dynamic business community, a company that is currently accessing research funding to investigate tinnitus, a hearing condition that currently over 1 million GP referrals each year. This project has multiple international partners including industry, government and academia. I would also like to pay special tribute to Mary's time and contribution whilst working on overseas aid and development. This resonates with me a lot due to my previous work at the United Nations and elsewhere abroad. Our overseas aid and development is testament to British compassion, and it can be leveraged as a powerful agent for, and a real measure of, Britain's reach and influence around the world. Mary was a public servant, and I hope she's able to continue her work in other places. Wakefield is fortunate to have had such a worthy Member of Parliament. Madam Deputy Speaker, whilst I conclude my comments about my predecessor, may I direct the thoughts of the House to the sad news of the death of His Majesty Sultan Qaboos of Oman. Through the Sultan, Oman has been an ally of Britain since 1970, in a part of the world where there are definite fault lines. His kingdom looked to us for guidance and friendship. In return, Oman has been a friend to Britain, and I hope will continue to represent the greater aspects of the United Kingdom's place in the world. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was born in Wakefield. I attended school in Wakefield. My late father, a dermatologist, practiced medicine in Wakefield, spending his entire working life in the NHS. This led to him to meet my mother, a nurse at Wakefield's Pinderfields Hospital. My nana was a night sister there. It's fair to say that I was quite literally owe my entire existence to the NHS and to Wakefield. I feel the warm glow of history when I tell you that, according to my mother, my grandfather, Wilfred Benjamin Reynolds, was the boys' brigade leader for the father of the Honourable Member for Hemsworth. I look forward to working with my constituency neighbour and having meetings with him, although I don't expect we'll be wearing shorts, playing conkers or drinking cocoa around the campfire. Gaining city status in 1888, Wakefield has many claims to fame. The cruise ship-loving singer Jane MacDonald and the 1980s band Black Lace hail from Wakefield. Many members may have danced to one of their memorable singing songs, such as Agadoo, at a wedding party or wedding... Edward... Clearly I have. Edward the Confessor had an estate in Wakefield hundreds of years after it was first settled by the Anglo-Saxons and Vikings. In J.S. Fletcher's Nooks and Corners of Yorkshire, a very good read, he describes Wakefield as the principal town along the banks of the Calder and has figured in history to no small extent. Indeed, it is just over 560 years ago to the day, on December 30th, 1460, that Richard Neville, Duke of York, and his son Thomas met their deaths at the Battle of Wakefield. The Lancastrians, led by Lord Clifford, defeated the Yorkists to suffer a major reverse months later at Britain's bloodiest battle, Towton, a site just down the road. Wakefield became yet another battlefield almost 200 years later, during the English Civil War, when the parliamentarian forces fought an engagement with the Royalists. Although, Madam Deputy Speaker, I now find myself a parliamentarian, although I confess to you to always having sympathised in the round with Cavaliers. According to an Old English ballad, Wakefield can also claim fame as the location for some of Robin Hood's shenanigans. It was at Stanley, later part of Wakefield's deep historical roots to the coal mining industry, that Robin and his band of freebooters had their infamous encounter with the Pindar of Wakefield. The Pindar was a nominated townsman of Wakefield who went toe-to-toe with Robin and his merry men after they goaded him by trespassing with stray animals on Wakefield land. Robin was so impressed by the Pindar's nerve and prowess that he invited him to join his outlaw band. Madam Deputy Speaker, this may be a legend, but it aptly captures some of the characteristics of the proud, honest, and plain-speaking constituents of Wakefield, and their continued willingness to fight for their rights. I would humbly submit that when you come to visit our city, you keep your flock of geese under control, or maybe consider leaving them at home. The Wakefield area is the traditional home of the headquarters of West Yorkshire Police, one of Britain's largest police forces. West Yorkshire Police, with their regional, national and international partners, have played a major role in counter-terrorism policing since the 7/7 attacks of 2005. The former Assistant Chief Constable, John Parkinson, was an early leader of the then North East Counter-Terrorism Unit and a thought leader in formulating and codifying the contest strategy, a key framework in UK counter-terrorism practice, keeping our communities safe and countering the radicalisation of the vulnerable. For the United Kingdom and her status in the world in terms of capability, they represent the very best, alongside our gallant armed forces, superb intelligence services, agencies, and our universally admired diplomats. These capabilities are respected and studied by a broad base of our international partners involved in the evolving, ongoing fight against terrorism and organised crime. Other famous people from Wakefield include John Ratcliffe, founder of the Ratcliffe Library in Oxford, Richard Fleming, founder of Lincoln College, Oxford. So, Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, forgive me, Wakefield has a link to education. It is on this point I wish to highlight a large number of young people in my constituency for whom equality of opportunity needs to be made real, more than just fine-sounding words. There are still too many young people from disadvantaged backgrounds in no employment, education or training. I look forward to working with Her Majesty's dynamic government, and whenever they are willing, the benches opposite, to support the creation of new jobs and opportunities to improve the lives of people who deserve more attention and greater fairness than they have had in the past. This will not come just by saturating our northern towns and cities facing similar circumstances with concrete cranes and porter cabins, but by delivering excellent education and training. The self-esteem that comes from earning the contents of a pay packet lifts people up and, in turn, brings the aspiration of owning a home. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have already mentioned the company investigating a treatment framework for tinnitus, but my constituency and the wider business community has within it companies involved heavily in fields that may surprise some members. There's a company working on supercomputer-generated models for predicting adverse weather patterns. After the recent floodings in our region, my constituency neighbours, the Right Honourable and Honourable Members for Doncaster North, Don Valley and Barnsley Central, may well welcome the positive outcomes of this work. There are also companies that are pioneering and improving new methods of high-tech manufacturing and recycling harmful plastics. I want to see these companies thrive, not only with their spirit of innovation, but also by employing skilled young people born and educated in the local area. During my campaign, I heard the voices of hard-working parents who want the best for the most important thing in their lives, their children. I want to help carry the torch already lit by the individuals and organisations in my constituency to foster confidence, aspiration and achievement. Madam Deputy Speaker, when members of this House have need for a tranquil place for quiet reflection in which to think about their choices, maybe for leadership, and decide, I would recommend a visit to the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, a real gem, not only of my constituency, but of God's own country. There they may find peace of mind and enhanced perspective, whilst appreciating the beautiful sculptures of Barbara Hepworth, Anthony Gormley and Henry Moore. There is one further individual I would like to mention, a great patriotic son of Yorkshire and a true servant of Wakefield, who, when asked in this place to speak for England, lent his voice and vote to the fight against tyranny, the Right Honourable Arthur Greenwood. Until the recent election, the last Conservative to return to this place by the people of Wakefield was a surgeon called George Hillman in 1931. Sadly, Hillman died that same year, and in the ensuing election of 32, Arthur Greenwood was elected, and that marked a continuous chain of Labour representation for Wakefield here, broken only 1 month ago today. My predecessor, Arthur, was the MP for Wakefield during the Second World War, and he served in the Inner War Cabinet, where he played a decisive role. In 1940, when Europe and East Asia were smouldering and the only guns left sounding in defiant support of freedom were British, there existed a plurality of voices in this cabinet of 5. Those with Churchill and the continued prosecution of the war, and others who thought that Britain was too weak and diminished to go it alone in the world. It was this camp which wished to sue Hitler's inhuman project for peace that seemed to have the numbers in cabinet. Faced with surrendering to the most villainous and malevolent powers, it was the deciding vote from Greenwood, and indeed therefore Wakefield, that sided with Churchill and informed the nation and our enemies that Britain would never surrender. The rest, as they say, is history. However, history sometimes provides parallels, and when faced again with the prospect of capitulation, in the spirit of Arthur Greenwood, much of what had been taken for granted as the traditional Labour vote up and down the country came out and entrusted a Conservative Prime Minister once again not to bend, bow or buckle. I will do my best, as I am certain so too will my newly elected honourable friends, not only from across Yorkshire and the North, but from all parts of our United Kingdom, to vindicate and honour all those who have lent us their vote. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am not drawing a direct connection from the past, if you will excuse a brief comment on the substantial subject of this debate. For too long now, Britain's role in the world has trended towards reactive and indecisive. I am sad to say that in too many corners of the world I visit or have lived, there is greater esteem for the UK there than sits within some of this country's own commentariat and policymakers. With a governmental majority and the confidence of the British people behind us, we must now turn our attention to restoring pride and purpose in our foreign policy. As my predecessor Greenwood knew, it is sometimes necessary to take decisive action and then summon all the strength of purpose the nation can muster to deliver that decision. We will not always please every country and every court of opinion, but we should recall that in this country's rich history of foreign affairs runs a proud theme of making the world a better place. We should take heart and be emboldened by this overwhelmingly positive legacy and continue to fight for the freedom of people everywhere to live and worship as they please. We can only realise this if we are strong, confident and outgoing. To succeed, we must take wise and informed decisions and have the vision and dynamism to lead. I believe that is what the people of Wakefield, and indeed the majority of all the nations of this great country, expect of us, and I know we can rise to that once again. Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank you and members present for listening to this maiden speech of mine, and I owe my sincere thanks to the people of Wakefield, who I am proud to serve. I seek a purposeful and confident future for our United Kingdom, wherein its people's hopes and aspirations are realised and great achievements recorded. A future as brilliant as our past is glorious.